How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the 7 heavenly virtues of lions? Part 2. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Remnants of lions. Ban and King were just staring in confusion as the woman kept kissing Gother. The thought of it is very strange considering what Gother is. Sure, he's shown to cry tears and his body feels like flesh. However, he doesn't bleed or feel pain when his head is ripped off. So is Naja kissing wood, or you know what? Humans have done stranger things that questions whether or not it was a good idea for them to exist. Gother, what is this? King asked before the doll suddenly invaded Naja's mind. Naja shook her head once it was over. When she was suddenly lifted into a hug and spun around. Okay, that's enough, care to explain who this lady is? Ban asked with an annoyed expression. Then Ban was immediately terrified by Gother. The doll did something horrifying that made the ruthless thief turned Biju feel like his skin was crawling. Making him wish that he was facing the Demon King again or the original QB. Gother smiled brightly and it was genuine. This is the real Naja lions. Gother exclaimed. Veronica scoffed, don't make stuff up. My aunt died when my father was a child. She said angrily. Oh, you must be Bartra's daughter. Naja said as Veronica looked annoyed. I think I should help with this. Gother said as he connected Naja's mind to Veronica's. A few minutes later, Veronica shook her head as she stared at Naja with wide eyes. As a precaution, Naruto recommended everyone take a seal to cancel attacks against the mind. Of course, it had to be renewed and replaced every so often to avoid any possible damage. The seal she had on was recently adjusted by the village, and despite how much stronger Gother's power was compared to Ino's clan, they still had the ability to manipulate memories and information which Ino failed to do during the Chunin exams. In other words, what Veronica saw was genuine, as the seal would have damaged anything Naja would have presented. At least that's what Veronica assumed. Oh my. Veronica was at a loss for words. Your Highness, if you look at it, she does look like you with slightly different features. Jericho pointed out. Mainly around the eyes and maybe the nose. Everything else looked the same, but the hair, which Veronica kept short. For some reason, as everyone compared both princesses, the two were making the exact poses whenever they moved. Awkwardly crossing their arms, putting their hands on their hips and even scratching their heads. Okay, you two can play the mirror game later. For now, we need to find out whatever was making all noise or whatever Herodias mentioned was happening. Ban said. Oh, you mean the light? I did that hoping someone would come. Although, I was rather nervous considering the fact that I learned about the new world. Naja explained. So you know Naja? Gother asked. Naja nodded sadly. I woke up and found out that my kingdom is gone, Gother. Not only that, someone left a journal describing these ninja lands as they put it. She said, surprising some of them. Wait, did Naruto drop a book when he went searching for us? Jericho asked, as no one had been to Lions since Naruto and Ban arrived. Better yet, how did we miss my aunt? Even if we ignore my aunt's sudden revival, that doesn't explain how she's been alone for so long. It's been a few months since Naruto found us after all. Veronica asked, making a good point. Ban squinted his eyes as he stared at Naja. I admitted, she is right. So how long have you been here, Naja? You don't look starved or dirty. He said before hearing Naja's stomach rumble. Naja blushed, to tell the truth, I have awakened a week or two ago, and I did have to ration whatever food has not gone to waste. She said, feeling embarrassed. I'm guessing taking a bath is also difficult. Ban said, making a rainy cloud appear of Naja's head. It's not that I'm high maintenance, but surviving on my own has been difficult. Naja replied. Do we have any spare food for her? I mean, we can't just let her starve to death. King said as Naja suddenly looked bony and frail. Gother lifted his shirt, maybe there's an old pancake in here. He said as he reached for the panel on his stomach. Veronica stopped Gother's arm. Let's not freak out my aunt with you being a doll. She said. Oh, I know very well that Gother is a doll. I was the one who found him after all. Naja spoke up, further surprising her niece. She smiled at the fond memories. I may have been gone for a while, but trapped in the body of a young woman. Yet I remember things as if I were elderly. She said. Veronica's sweat dropped. Just how old are you technically speaking? She asked. I am 16 years old, and what about you? Naja asked. I'm 19, now this is more awkward. Veronica said as Naja blinked in confusion. Later in the castle. Ban whistled at how dirty the castle is. If I were my old self, I would have brought a lot of burlap sacks. He said as he looked around. Before noticing Naja's confused face. Oh, by the way, I used to be a former thief. Then a holy knight. Then a criminal again, but that last one was because I was framed. He said with a smile. Naja giggled nervously, good to know. I suppose. However, old habits died hard. Ban interrupted as Naja got nervous. Then I became a demon fox that wasn't aware of what I was for a millennium or two. He said with a foxy grin similar to his adoptive son. Naja slowly reached for Gother's hand. Gother, let me show you some new books I found. She said, hoping to get away from Ban as quickly as possible. Ban scratched the back of his head. I wonder if Elaine would want me to bring her something nice. He said, not caring if Naja was still in hearing range. But Veronica. The second princess looked around her old bedroom. Luckily the structure was just old and not decrepit and damaged. The place looked like no one was home for a few years, rather than looking like an ancient ruin. Though Veronica wasn't going to be optimistic about finding any plants Elizabeth or Margaret want her to bring back. But that in mind, Veronica grabbed a sealing scroll she was given and grabbed whatever was in fine condition. A couple of jewels she never wore as she hated dressing up, some photographs of her family and a few other personal treasures, before moving on to the bedrooms that once belonged to her sisters. Doing the same with whatever she thought was valuable. I can't help how I should feel. Is this me packing up and moving or looting my own home? Veronica asked before finally moving on to Bartra's room. As she looked around for anything emotionally valuable, Veronica came across a large painting of a younger Bartra and Carolyn Lyons with the queen appearing pregnant in the portrait. Veronica smiled as she slowly tried to take down the portrait to seal away in storage. Only to screw up as she attempted to take it off without realizing how attached it was to the wall. Veronica panicked as she thought she ruined the portrait once the frame broke apart. As she clumsily tried shoving broken parts together, Veronica found herself in dire straits as she didn't have the materials to put it back together. Not that she would know how or notice how bad it really was if she could somehow connect the pieces. Luckily the painting itself was in fine condition and was dirtied or damaged in any way. With a loud sigh, Veronica gently rolled up the painting and tied it before sealing it away as well. Just as she saw if there was any ways to save the frame, Veronica noticed something trapped between the broken frames. Is it junk or Veronica trailed off as she found a little wrapped up sheet of paper. The paper itself had a symbol of scales. The type to usually seen being held by statues of Lady Justice. Veronica could be too curious, but she decided to pocket the paper and see if there was any significance later. I swear, this world makes me too paranoid. Veronica said before leaving her parents' bedroom. With Naja. The former princess dragged Gother to her library where she presented her book. I see, you've found more tales that have caught your interest. He said. Najda shook her head. No, it's full of explanations of the world outside of Lyons. Even more so, it's filled with unique magic. She said. Gother raised his hand to stop her. Naja, you could not cast any magic at all. How would you know the difference between unique and common? He asked with a tilt of his head. Naja blushed, it just felt unique, I even felt hope seeing it. I cannot explain the phenomenon as all the other books are still in good condition. She said handing the tome over to Gother. Book of Avalon. Gother nodded at it. I see this book is. Naja looked at him with great interest. In fine condition and very knowledgeable I am assuming. Yet I see nothing special. He said making his lover almost face fault. Maybe I was just scared. Naja said. And again, Merlin is our expert on magic. Although I fail to see the logic in seeing how a book from over a millennium ago could anticipate the modern era. I doubt any one of us left it here during our first arrival. Gother said as he contemplated the book's purpose. A minute later, Veronica came down. I've packed up everything I need. What about you two? She asked. I will pack up anything still of value and prepare for our departure. Naja said as she ran. I will keep this book safe. Gother said. 2 hours later. After the castle was finished and Naja really hoping Ban didn't steal anything of emotional value, along with taking anything Merlin might want from her old shack. Everyone gathered up all of their belongings into several sealing scrolls and securing them into their bags afterwards. With that out of the way, the group awaited Jericho who was probably paying her respects to her deceased brother. Sorry I'm late, just went on a tangent with Gustav. Jericho said referring to her brother. It's fine, anyone forgetting anything? I don't want complaints or other people suddenly resurrecting. Ban asked. I think that's it. I even did a quick scouting run to see if anyone was still frozen. King said as he was very thorough in his search. I guess that's it then. What's that? Like 10 total people from Lyons? Ban asked, wondering how still lived after all these years. Naja frowned. I heard of civilizations and kingdoms falling and growing. Yet it's only really scary when you witness it. I am lucky enough that I only had to see the aftermath. She said looking back at her home. It's fine princess, at least your mind wasn't altered for the past millennium. Ban said. Well we should go then. It only gets harder the longer I stay. Naja said before hearing her stomach growl. That and the difficulty of fresh food. She said. I will scrape off that pancake if there is one. Gother said as he pulled out a spoon. I'll make something on the way. We don't need to see you scrape off a moldy pancake. Ban said as he made Gother put the spoon away. Days later, Konoha. Ban groaned, finally. Kingo, fill the report. He ordered. King's eye twitched, we all have to make a report, remember? He asked. Nope, just you today and make it a good one. Ban said before King turned his pillow into its guardian form. You're coming with me. Gother, just take the girls back and hopefully keep Naja from accidentally giving Margaret a heart attack. I think the cycle of death itself is already having a field day. King said as he dragged Ban away. Yuriko sighed, well, what's another dead person back to life? She asked as Naja looked around curiously. So unique. The calligraphy here is different as well. Naja exclaimed as eyes started to look upon her. Time to go. Veronica said, dragging her aunt away. At the mansion. Meliodas was sitting and smiling while Elizabeth was just staring in confusion. Both looked at Nanashi, who had just arrived after being allowed to follow Guy's group. Luckily he managed to make a quick story to Herodias, who recognized him for reasons he had yet to explain. I'm surprised your skin is so smooth after all these years. Meliodas said. Meliodas, that is not the surprise here. Elizabeth said. She's right, you know, although I should be the one shocked here. How are you two alive? Nanashi asked. I have an explanation for that. Meliodas said, garnering the samurai's attention. Is what I would say if I had one. He said, making him sigh. Well, I have some news for you. Nanashi said as he pulled out a scroll. I would tell you who it's from, but I got a bit of a curse stuck on me. He said. This news concerned Elizabeth. Nanashi, if you wish I could attempt to break it. I may have recently awakened, but I've awakened to my true potential before my death. She said. I don't know, but I wouldn't suggest it. It's not as strong as the supreme deity's curse. Yet I wouldn't recommend messing with it for now. Nanashi said as Meliodas took the scroll. The short man proceeded to read the contents of the letter. It's more of an instruction manual than a message. Meliodas said. Really? Elizabeth asked. 1. If Arthur lost Excalibur, you have permission to kill him. Elizabeth didn't like that message. I would rather keep the death threats to a minimum. She said. I won't promise anything. Merlin might get mad. Meliodas said, knowing Merlin isn't mean but a bit strict. 2. Find Avalon. That one sounds familiar. What was it again? Meliodas asked, wondering what Avalon meant. 3. Do us RLN. Okay, I definitely don't know what that one is. Meliodas said as Elizabeth also felt confused. It's not legible. Elizabeth said as it was blurry. Nanashi sighed, that better not be priority. Even I don't know or remember everything it was meant to hold. He admitted. 4. Be patient. Meliodas gave the scroll a blank stare, that's it. I'm already bored. He said. Perhaps it's encrypted. Once Merlin feels better, I should ask her. Elizabeth said as she wrapped up the scroll. Or maybe Vivian, she's been looking super nervous lately. Meliodas suggested. Anyways, is there a place I can stay the night? Nanashi asked. I think Cal can make a spare room. Meliodas answered. Cal? Nanashi asked. Cal something, he's like the heart of the house. Meliodas answered. But grief. Nanashi said with a sigh before hearing someone open the door. Ellie, I think there's someone you might want to meet. Said a voice belonging to Veronica. Elizabeth perked up, welcome back sister, who is your visitor? She asked as she reached the doorway. Only to see Naja smiling nervously, oh my, a doppelganger. She said. Veronica sighed, you might want to call Margaret and sit down for this one. She said, confusing her sister. But the Namikaze household. Kasumi was looking over some scrolls she was secretly given. As they were copies of the notes Naruto used. Along with a duplicate of Naruto's research. Apparently, despite being himself, he was pretty smart when actually focusing on something. Because the notes were clearly written well and organized, meaning Kasumi had to put in the effort to understand her bloodline. Meanwhile, she had to worry about the Rinnegan that Menma had. As he had to be more isolated because of how rare and powerful the Dojutsu was. With the village barely surviving 2 attacks, with the latter luckily having been prepared because of Naruto's scouts within the goddess clan. It didn't mean that the internal threats were gone. Deep down, there are still greedy people that are willing to do crazy things out of their own self-interest. It didn't help that Menma also found the shinobi world to be very scary and didn't want to be a shinobi. Much to Minato's ire, but at least Kushina was willing to accept the choice. She didn't want to force her family to go through any more suffering. Mainly because they were slowly being divided as she gave into her delusions of her second home being protected and everything being fine in the end. Things couldn't be any worse with the death of her eldest, and the last thing she wanted to do was force her second son to go through something similar. This is getting stressful. Kasumi muttered as she was lost with the notes. However, something else caught her eye. Among the notes was a mysterious envelope that had yet to be opened. From the looks it, there was no sign of it being tampered with. Kasumi held it up and inspected it. She couldn't find any proof of it being opened before or even being put back together. It left her wondering why Naruto had yet to open it. Although it didn't help much as Kasumi herself couldn't find any way to open it. Not even with a sharp weapon like a kunai or a sword could do as much as tear it. This was followed by Kasumi being a bit reckless and trying a small technique meant for practicing fire jutsus. But the small light of fire on her finger, she attempted to burn a small part of it, thinking she could tear a hole into it. Unfortunately, Kasumi almost burned the entire letter in her room. No. 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 Kasumi panicked as she ran to the bathroom to put out the fire in the sink. A moment later, Kushina ran in. "What's wrong, Kasumi-chan? Is it that time of the year there's tampons under the sink?" she yelled frantically. Kasumi blushed as she hid the letter. "Ka-chan, that's not the issue," she yelled. "Then what happened?" Kushina asked, with the tampons already on hand. Kasumi started to sweat. Bad food. I'm having the runs," she said, forcing her mother to leave. "Okay, just let me know if you need anything," Kushina said, still suspicious of her daughter. Once the door was locked and Kasumi was mostly sure no one would barge in on her. She looked at the envelope again and was shocked. It was covered in smoke and dust, but after a quick wipe, the letter was clean and didn't look like it was touched. "Seriously?" Kasumi asked before she tried putting it under the sink. Risking the chance to dampen it with water, like an idiot, she patiently waited for results. Instead of the envelope merely dropped all the water that covered it. Kasumi even went as far as to tap it against the sink to see if it was made of some sort hard material. "I guess there's no helping it," Kasumi said, seeing no way for her to see the contents of the envelope. She let out a groan as she tried stretching and pulling on it again. "What is this thing made of? Is it the seal?" she asked herself. There was a seal on the envelope. The best way to describe the strange seal is to say that it looked like a cross inside of a ring. It was an odd cross that was horizontal rather than vertical. Kasumi was sure that the shape was special in some way as Fuinjutsu is sensitive and the slightest wrong markings could function to do something else. This left Kasumi in a tough spot and she knew that only someone else of greater skill and intellect would be able to open the seal. "Maybe I can ask Merlin-san?" Kasumi asked, seeing as Naruto had surpassed her parents. So there was no doubt Merlin, who is a genius from her own era, could figure it out. It's a long shot, but Kasumi had to put her confidence in the abilities of her brother's lover. Yes, it was very weird to put that last part into her mind. However, Kasumi and even Naruto himself would be more surprised to see the real side of Merlin if she revealed herself. Meanwhile, Narumi was briefly listening in on Kasumi. "Stupid Minato, you're siding with those strangers," Narumi thought before storming off on her own. At T&I. Makoto and Izumi were still being grilled on having the truth given to Ibiki and the rest of his staff. It was only until Inoichi arrived that he did his mind scan. With the many days of interrogations having gone by, Inoichi couldn't deny that they were who they said they were. With having requested the option of having Makoto's grave dug up to prove if this was trick. Herodias did not want any stone unturned and needed to confirm everything. The concept of a human being resurrected without any drawback is virtually impossible. Although it's not as if the undercover goddess would reveal Meliodas and Elizabeth. It's something that bothered her, especially with supernatural creatures such as demons being only of myth and wild stories. Especially if Herodias herself revealed who she was, as Hiruzen and Inoichi are the only ones who know, with the latter being under oath to not say anything. Despite those two being resurrected, they aren't humans despite their appearances. So initially, Herodias thought that was something else, as this isn't the first time Meliodas and Elizabeth have escaped death. Yet, two random uchiha coming back from the dead would be something of great concern. Leaving Herodias wondering what caused this, as the closest thing to this happening was the Ito Tensei, but those might as well been manipulated zombies. Then again, the Ito Tensei could have just been a jutsu that manipulates the biology of a sentient with the memories of the person who was resurrected. Well, that's at least what T&I is thinking, as Elaine's resurrection would say otherwise. Ibiki sighed at Inoichi's explanation. "How did this even happen? The only thing we can do is go grave robbing," he said. "And it would be risking the desecration of a grave," Itachi replied. "Damn it, we're overthinking things," Ibiki said, cursing under his breath. Inoichi rubbed his temples. "I suppose if all else fails, we can only pray that Kami forgives us," he said. "Talk about a literal graveyard shift. We better get some poor souls to dig them up. Because this is not funny," Ibiki said as he looked over the files on the Uchiha women again. Only he quickly remembered something and cursed. "I'm being an idiot. I forgot about relationships," he muttered. "What relationships?" Inoichi asked. "I know we can't expect to know everyone's connection to each other, but as the wife of a clan head, did Makoto Uchiha not have a decent number of friends? To be fair, she's not exactly an antisocial wall of bricks like Fugaku," Ibiki explained. Inoichi nodded. I think I might have a few candidates in mind as to who she might know. He said. But regardless, maybe try getting a bit more information about their personal life first. Just to find any discrepancies. He said before putting in a request to Herodias. Ibiki sighed, just what is going on? I don't if I can handle the answer, but we all need one. He mutters as Inoichi leaves. And then there's Anko. What the hell did she do the kid and why did she escape her cell during the second invasion? He asked himself. Later that afternoon, in the cells. Mikoto was beyond stressed, very confused and mentally lost. She keeps telling them that she's Mikoto Uchiha and did her best to explain the events of her life until Itachi killed her and most of the clan. Yet, there was still the detail of truth of the massacre. Somehow Inoichi didn't get that, most likely just to confirm her identity, but it's a miracle that her mind hasn't revealed a truth that big or even asked about it. Then again, Inoichi could know and decided to use this as incrimination. And then there's Izumi. I wonder where she is. Mikoto thought before hearing a door open. Right this way. Said a guard to a visitor. Mikoto felt a sense of curiosity as to who was coming. Only to lie down on her bed as she expected Ibiki or another interrogator to bother her again. With Mikoto slowly giving in to despair as they refused to believe her and Izumi's tale. Yet, she would be surprised by the appearance of a familiar face. Mikoto. Mikoto sat up and looked shocked to see who her visitor is. Kushina? Mikoto asked. Kushina grabbed the bar of the cell. Mikoto, how are you alive? I was told that Itachi murdered everyone but Sasuke. She asked. Mikoto shook her head. I don't know, I woke up in the graveyard with Izumi, but no one will believe us. She said. Kushina paid close attention to Mikoto's words. As a censor from the Uzumaki clan, she could vaguely remember Mikoto's chakra signature as well as sensing no lie in her statement. But what happened before you supposedly died? Kushina asked. Itachi killed me along with Fugaku. Mikoto answered. Are you sure he didn't seal you or anything like that? I know Itachi had a relationship with Izumi of sorts. Kushina asked. I don't think so, his Fuinjutsu is limited to storage scrolls and I didn't see Izumi during the massacre. Mikoto answered. Is there any details missing? Was it really just Itachi or did someone help him? Kushina asked, wanting to see if Mikoto would slip up as an imposter or give any detail to prove it's really her. Mikoto shook her head again. I don't know, it all happened so fast. Fugaku wanted the entire clan to be in one place. She stopped herself, realizing she slipped up. Mikoto, why would Fugaku want the clan together? Kushina asked. There was an emergency clan meeting. Kushina believed that much so far. So Fugaku and the elders were communicating about the latest issues. Including the recent discrimination due to the QB attack. Mikoto continues as Kushina nods. Things weren't going well with how things are handled. Especially when there are so few willing to speak with the Sandaime as to finding a peaceful resolution. She finishes. Resolution for what? Kushina asked, feeling the anticipating building up. Mikoto took a deep breath before answering. Where she briefly saw the guard reaching towards one of those small radios used to communicate with others between short distances. For despite everyone's hesitance to believe that Mikoto was who she said she is. Any danger to the village, even as a joke, is not something to be ignored. For however people saw Fugaku. He was a man who fought for his village as well as caring for his own clan. Mikoto says as she closes her eyes. Yet when the clan itself was willing to go through reckless actions that would endanger Konoha. Yet when the time came, Fugaku refused to fight Itachi and I felt the same. She said. Mikoto, what exactly did the Uchiha clan want to do that could harm the village? Kushina asked. Mikoto took one last deep breath. My clan plotted to overthrow the Sandaime and rebuild the government where they rule. She said. Then all hell broke loose when several squadrons of Anbu arrived. The sudden action surprised Kushina as she was shoved out of the way and Mikoto was dragged out for further questioning. Like Mikoto thought, the smallest details, even if seen as jokes, will not be tolerated. At the same time, Kushina had her own questions if they were planning to overthrow the village. Did Itachi have a hand in it or did he really lose his mind? She wondered before being forcefully escorted out. But Herodias, some time later. The Gondaime found a lot more files on her desk. Herodias was shocked to see what really happened. Despite her constant identity change, she's been in Konoha since its founding. She knew very well that the Uchiha were not exactly loved and Tobirama only made this worse. Herodias did not want to blame the Nidaime, but she knew he only further encouraged internal clan warfare. Hashirama sought peace, and despite the death of his brother Izuna, Madara wanted the same. To end all needless fighting and build a village. Yet Tobirama continued his mistrust, and this finally led up to the QB attack. Where Konoha no longer saw the Uchiha clan as one of many things the village had pride in. Of course the Uchiha clan had its reasons for wanting to break down a corrupt government that ignored the distrust. Yet they were wrong in doing it, as this would have caused civil war. Perhaps some would side with the Uchiha in fear of either their power or that their own clans would face the same fate. On the other hand, it would only encourage hate for the Uchiha and amplify the village's reasoning to distrusting them, creating an all-out war that would have either destroyed the village or weakened it further. With Itachi preventing the worst-case scenario. The village seeing the clan as victims, one wild individual who betrayed them, and no war being started. There's a lot to understand, but this will be an internal issue. If this gets out, Herodias stopped herself and looked towards the corner of the ceiling, where she threw a pen that embedded itself into the wall. Chaos will break out. But that's just thinking of the worst to possibly come, she said before white lightning spread around the corner of the room thanks to the pen, causing a loud scream to be heard and making an Anbu with a blank mask to fall down onto the floor. And with Danzo dead because of Naruto's possession, there's still his faction, Herodias said as she stood up. By now, the Anbu already surrounded the room to look for more rogue shinobi. Anbu, take that traitor away, and someone have INT fetch Mikado and Uchiha. There's something they are hiding and they will answer all of my questions, she said before leaving the office. At the mansion, Kasumi was waiting on Merlin's beepasis, and knowing the woman this long, she was aware that the mage takes a lot of precautions and enjoys taking in new details. It also did not help that she passed out a few days ago from having to speak with Gother about his brand mark. Only now did Merlin come up with something, and Veronica indirectly helped. I found something, but I'm not sure I can open it without destroying the contents, Merlin said as she revealed the envelope and the paper. So what? Is this supposed to be from a scholar? Kasumi asked. I sincerely doubt it, Merlin answered bluntly. No, there is more to this. As if it came into a sequence of sorts, she said before using her magic to reveal a hidden message. Temperance. Kindness. What does that mean? Kasumi asked. Temperance is an act of abstinence, and I am sure you know what kindness means, Merlin answered. Kasumi whined. Does this mean there's more puzzle pieces to find? How am I going to find them? She asked. Merlin wondered about the same thing. It's only a coincidence, for now at least, she said as she thought about it more. You said this was hidden among Naruto's notes? She asked. Kasumi nodded. Nai-san's notes were full of junk in this, but I don't think he was able to open it, she answered. Strange, Naruto's notes and a portrait in lions, Merlin muttered. I thought you said it was a coincidence, Kasumi said. For now, but maybe it's a poor choice of words. I can sense the magic from the goddess clan here, Merlin said as Elizabeth arrived with a drink platter. You should not overexert yourself, Merlin, Elizabeth said as she put down the drinks. I am doing no such thing. Just feeling confused by recent events, Merlin replied as she used her levitation to pick up a drink. What is confusing? Elizabeth asked, wondering if she could lend some advice. This, Kasumi found an envelope with a strong seal attached to it. When I studied it beside an old sheet of paper that Veronica presented me, these words came out, Merlin explained as Elizabeth read them. This is indeed interesting, but I think I can open it if oh no, she said as a small spark of fire happened. Elizabeth, Merlin almost shouts as she drops her drink to stop the fire. I'm sorry. Even now, I'm still so clumsy, Elizabeth said apologetically. Kasumi's sweat dropped. I think I see where the airheaded relatives come from, she said, earning a confused look from Elizabeth. Merlin sighed in relief. At least the envelope is still intact. Although that still begs the question as to why these were hidden. If these were hidden among the notes and a portrait in lions, it would leave a fractured timeline of events, she said, unable to explain the phenomenon. Perhaps there's more in the old apartment where Naruto lived, Elizabeth suggested. Well, it's not like I have any clues. That is, unless Jenna and Zenari are hiding something and are not aware of it, Merlin suggested. Elizabeth smiled. It would be a good start, she said before remembering something. Actually, do you think Kasumi could try signing the scroll? She asked. Merlin deadpanned. If your other grandchild did it at age 5 and showed it off to rub it in someone else's face, then there is nothing stopping you, Elizabeth, she said, having heard about Naruto bragging about his bloodline and connection to the goddess realm. He was a fool, but sometimes fools are more open to new paths, she thought with a smile creeping around her lips. Why is she suddenly smiling? And what scroll? Kasumi thought fearfully. Elizabeth gave another bright smile. Kasumi, I think despite the incident with your toads, there is still the option of signing the scroll to the goddess realm, she said. Kasumi asked. Summoning scroll, Merlin answered. Is that what they call it? Elizabeth asked, still sounding airheaded as ever. The summoning scroll that can summon a goddess, Kasumi asked. Merlin sighed. And the apple does not fall far from the tree. Did you forget your bloodline already? She asked, making Kasumi scratch her head sheepishly. Oh yeah, I forgot. Kasumi replied with a sheepish smile. Merlin sighed again. What will we do with you? She asked. Was Nai-san this tough to work with? Kasumi asked, hoping she doesn't bring in bad memories. Only to receive silence, making Kasumi internally squeal thinking she screwed up. It was bad enough that they were constantly talking about her deceased brother so casually. Yet, she felt like it hurt them more than it did herself. After all, Naruto's real family were not the ones who birthed him, but the ones who raised him. Actually, to be honest, I only knew Naruto for a few months. Merlin admitted. I was recently resurrected after his death. Elizabeth also admitted, still confused by this phenomenon as well. Asumi suddenly had a bad migraine. I think I should just head home and sleep. She said as she could not handle this. Although some would wonder why Kasumi did not know this. Her knowledge was not of understanding everything just yet. Starting with the concept of the rules of death having been violated. Okay, have a safe trip back. Elizabeth said as the blonde girl left the mansion. Perhaps you should call it a night as well. She told Merlin. I'm fine Elizabeth. Merlin said. Big sis. Elizabeth said. Merlin asked. I'm your big sis and when I say it's time for bed, you put the pencils and papers down and go to sleep. Elizabeth said sternly as if she was speaking with a child. Merlin gave Elizabeth a blank stare. I can stay up longer. She said. Elizabeth gently placed her hands onto Merlin's shoulders. To bed, now. She said. I am not a child Elizabeth. Merlin said as she tried to pry Elizabeth's hands off of her. Merlin, I know you are hungry. But you will have to feed yourself in the morning. Elizabeth said. Merlin's sweat dropped. I am not hungry. She responded. You are Merlin, not for food, but something that can never fill you. Elizabeth said before forcing Merlin to head to her room. Meanwhile, at the forest. At the makeshift Fairy King's forest. The fairies were all continuing to adjust inside of the forest. Naturally keeping to themselves until they were able to make a barrier to keep out the humans from stumbling into their land so casually. King was still speaking with Gloxinia, who surprisingly did not disappear with the demon clan during Naruto's final sealing. Instead, he and Droll were still here and hiding among the fairies. Both renounced their ties to the Demon King's faction and surrendered their respective commandments, which completely removed their demon marks. They could visibly see that Gloxinia appeared normal, but they did not want to confirm with Droll. Not because they seemed imposing or had some misguided mistrust. Rather, Droll mentioned that his commandment was on his butt cheek and wanted someone to check to see if it was gone for good. Nobody wanted to see a giant's butt. Now both were still here, hoping to at least find a new sense of purpose and spend the rest of their existence rather than siding with the demon clan. Though, they were heavily surprised by how much has changed. Especially with the few demons that abandoned their clan at the end of the previous holy war. Although, the real surprise was Gloxinia learning that his sister was alive. Rather strange as he initially believed that a human named Drew killed her as that was his main reason to join the demon clan. As he blamed the humans from stigma. At least we both have our sisters again. King joked. We should appreciate what we have Harlequin. We all lose what is precious to us and we lose ourselves. Gloxinia told him. I know, I didn't expect history to be repeated though. King said as he remembered the time he tried to kill Ban. Those who do not know it are doomed to repeat it. How is your hound by the way? Gloxinia asked. Oslo is usually nice and friendly, but I don't know what's gotten into him. King said as Oslo snarled and tried to attack Gloxinia upon witnessing him. Would it be strange to say that I have some familiarity with it? Gloxinia asked. It would. King answered honestly. What King did not know is that Gloxinia almost felt like he recognized Oslo. Strange to say the least considering that he never once met Oslo. Yet, Gloxinia felt as if this was something meant to be expected. The familiarity was too confusing to understand. Still, this feels too convenient. King said. In what way? Gloxinia asked curiously. That somehow, in some way. The demon clan was summoned because of a temporary resurrection technique. King answered. Ban explained the technique that was used to resurrect my sister and it was the same one to resurrect the commandments. It's like controlling the dead, but Naruto healed my sister to the point she was a fresh person. He explained. I see, it does sound confusing. Yet, as the son of the Demon King, Zeldris has certain authorities as well as some powers from the Demon King himself. We all believed he would succeed his father because of his abilities. Gloxinia said as he thought more about it. So maybe, the previous seal was somehow broken. It's too hard to think about. King said. I should ignore it, but I can't help but feel stressed about it. He said. That's the point of becoming the Fairy King. You will not always be able to relax as anything could happen. Good or bad. Gloxinia said as King went into deeper thought. At least until Diane came out, King. You won't believe what we found. She exclaimed. What? What happened? King asked. We were hanging out by the tree when Jurheed found something. Diane said as Jurheed appeared and extended her hand. Only for King to face fault. What? Is it some sort of clothing accessory? Gloxinia asked, wondering what his sister found. King sighed. This Gloxinia is called a pen. It's like a pencil with markings that can't be erased. He answered. Gloxinia felt patronized. I see. He said, feeling slightly annoyed. Modern people no longer use feathers. Is there any significance at all? He asked. It's made of plastic, uses a string and already has ink inside. King said blankly, but somehow intrigued his predecessor. You don't have to be mean, King. Diane said with a pout. She is correct, Harlequin. This modern tool is not something we carry. It was among the few things I was able to take from the sacred tree. Jurheed explained. What happened to the sacred tree? I forgot to ask about that. Gloxinia asked. King sighed, it's dead. He said as Gloxinia's eyes were the size of dinner plates. I know, I'm a bad king, but it wasn't my fault that I wasn't there. Besides, there was nothing we could do to save it. He explained. Actually, I did not think about it at the time because I was packing up whatever was left before being cramped into that storage magic. Jurheed started to say before Gloxinia looked confused. We can explain that later. King said. When this petite figure with blonde hair and golden eyes appeared and presented this among our belongings. Jurheed said. And where are they now? Gloxinia asked. They disappeared, as if they were a spirit or an illusion. Jurheed answered. Yeah, it was really creepy. She even said her name was Dahlia. Diane said, surprising the two kings. However, King saw a discrepancy. That doesn't make sense, it couldn't be King Dahlia, could it? He asked while in thought. Who is Dahlia? Gloxinia asked. The second fairy king who succeeded you after you left. I also found it confusing as Dahlia looked more masculine. Jurheed answered. And muscular, he was big and had ginger hair. That was either an imposter or it really was an illusion. King said. But what about the pen? Diane asked. King gently took the pen from Jurheed. Maybe Merlin or someone else can look at it. I don't want to find out that this thing can suddenly explode. He said. Diane nodded. I guess that makes sense. Then again, you should have questioned how modern office supplies were inside the tree when no one could access it. She said, making King stop midair. Your lover makes a point. Gloxinia said. I don't know, a lot of stuff is still backwards here. We just figured out colored pictures in Britannia when this era just figured out how to make flying ships and moving pictures. King said as the modern era was not too advanced in some aspects. They even have these things called radios to communicate in short distances. Diane said. Do you not have access to mages with messaging style magic? Gloxinia asked. Only few people have skills such as that, brother. Jurheed answered. Still, this is pretty suspicious. King said as he looked at the pen in his hand. Elsewhere, with Fillmore. The fox was panting as he lied beside a tree. The fox had run for so long and finally made it to the land of fire. Wondering what it was that his companion was asking him to do. At the same time, he really wanted a cold yet strong drink. Maybe find a good place to urinate before finding the same tree to sleep under. Why did he send me here of all places? We still have, oh wait a minute. I haven't been keeping up with the times. Damn it. What year is it? Fillmore asked angrily as he looked around for any nearby people. While Fillmore could not see anyone nearby. He could hear the sounds of laughter. Fillmore immediately got into a defensive stance as he looked around for whoever was near him. Show yourself. I'm just a fox, but I'm also a martial artist that has over 900 championships in the past millennia with over 1 million students. Fillmore said, hoping his lie would work. Only to hear more laughter. Silly fox, you cannot fool me. Said the voice. Fillmore snarled, show yourself, coward. I'll kick your ass and take your money for nutrients. Yeah, nutrients. He lied again. Nutrients was code for alcohol. Don't make promises you can't keep. Because threats on their own are just petty. Said the voice's owner as she revealed herself. Oh wise wah wah wah, what, it's you. Fillmore exclaimed. What's wrong, Fillmore? Are you not happy to see me? I know my master would feel similar. The woman asked. Fillmore glared at the woman. You little piece of, if you weren't a lady. I would say something really mean. He yelled only to be mocked by more laughter. Damn it. How the hell did you escape Lilia? The old man and woman sealed you before the war. He asked. That would be telling. However, I do have a request from you. The woman, now identified as Lilia, said. Not happening. Not for all of the honey-flavored alcohol in the world. Fillmore said, defying her. Lilia grinned. Too bad, I thought I would have to get this done with no resistance. Oh well, I suppose there will be no reunion when I meet my master again. She said as her hand started to glow. Fillmore snarled, don't say that like I'm an easy opponent. He said, looking angry. 7 deadly sins, asked Big Tsum Tsum. Lilia raised her palm, Requiem. She casts a large magic circle under Fillmore. Who immediately jumped, "You should have focused on containing me. Not trying to tire me out," he says, recognizing that spell. Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu. He yells as he unleashes waves of small fireballs at Lilia who moved around them. Lilia's smile never left her face, "Lacilfied," she says as a magic bow appears in her arms. From there, Lilia proceeded to fire multiple arrows of light at Fillmore, who quickly dodged them before running up to her. Where he attempted to slap her with his tail. Only to have it grabbed and pulled tightly as he was tossed onto the ground. Brute force. Really? Lilia asked before attempting to fire again. Only to be scared away with a giant wave of flames from Fillmore's mouth. Scared? Really? Face it, you sad excuse for a student. Your teacher is always the best, and even if she's back now, there's no way in purgatory you're going to beat her. You're a sad arrogant child that's angry at the world because of your flat chest, he yelled. Lilia's eyes started to twitch as her pride was hit very hard. Pathetique. She yells as several lasers chase Fillmore around. Blind style. Great breakthrough. Fillmore yells as he blows a giant gust of wind at Lilia, who starts to fly away. Lilia started grit her teeth as she used her levitation to avoid hitting the ground. Lacilfied. She casts again, shooting more light arrows at Fillmore. Fire style. Fire dragon jutsu. Fillmore yells as the dragon engulfs Lilia. That won't stop her, he said as the fire dispersed as Lilia had surrounded herself in a perfect cube. Your jutsus are really annoying. I hate the fact that all these modern monkeys can use them now, Lilia said, sounding peeved. Oh, you're annoyed now? Gee, here I thought Vivian was a bad student. At least she learned to make up for her mistakes, unlike a stubborn mule playing pretend. Fillmore yells, further goading Lilia. You asked for it. Pathetique. Lilia yells as she tries to shoot Fillmore again. Blind style. Air bullet. Fillmore yells only for the attack to be dodged. Shadow clone jutsu. He adds as several foxes run at Lilia, who started destroying them with her lasers. Until one of them tackled Lilia onto the ground and clawed her face. Lilia let out a scream of pain before blasting the clone's head off. Along with the rest of the clones until the real Fillmore revealed himself above her head. Blind style. Violent whirlwind. Fillmore yells as he catches Lilia in a vortex of wind. Lilia glared at the fox as her anger started to come out. No more. She yells before her whole body was engulfed in darkness. The sudden appearance of the darkness was so intense that it destroyed a great big portion of the field. Fillmore barely survived the attack as he was sent skidding away by a few hundred feet. A few seconds after stopping, the fox slowly stood up and looked to see that Lilia transformed and had a giant black snake beside her. DCH, you really would take these kinds of measures for power, Lilia, Fillmore said as he slowly stood up to face her. You really are Merlin's student, he said as a snide remark. Instead of being angry, Lilia laughed again. You are incorrect, my vulpine acquaintance. I am far better. You might as well give me what you have, she said. You don't even know what it is, you brat, Fillmore shot back. True, but I have some idea of what it's for and that there are 6 more parts, Lilia said before she started to power up even more. Goodbye, fox, I suppose you were entertaining at one point, she said. Fillmore scoffed, and at some point, you were a good person. Bring it on, you brat, he said, preparing for his demise. Lilia sighed, very well, Leviathan, she yells as her dragon grows bigger and crashes onto the fox. In the distance. Fillmore winced in pain as he heard a loud explosion in the distance. TCH, stupid kid forgot that kitsunes are tricksters. She was probably too busy showboating to notice that I left a clone in my place, he said before stumbling off. I gotta hurry though. She knows this thing won't be destroyed so easily. Lilia is impatient and she will get frustrated until she realizes I duped her. He mumbled as he pulled out a small file from a seal on his shoulder. The fox sighed, he wondered why all 7 of these things were in the shape of office supplies. Maybe it's a reference or something. Who knows? At least they look too ordinary for anyone to get suspicious of at first glance. Let's see, I think this one is humility. That leaves 6 more, and unless those fairies screwed up or go back to their tree. That means they should at least have 3, making this 4. Or did I count wrong? Fillmore asked himself. But 012607. The boy was in deep thought as he wrote in his book with great passion. When the young girl approached him with a curious expression on her face. What are you doing? The girl asked. Just categorizing some things. To remember for later. The boy answered. Anything I can help with? The girl asked. The boy smiled, not yet for now. Just remember Avalon, okay? He asked. How can I forget? We just got here. The girl asked. Just do it for me. There might be a chance we come back in the future as adults. The boy answered. The girl nodded. I wouldn't mind, she said with a blush. Good, but for now. I think it's time to rest. I've been working on this for too long. Studies can wait until tomorrow. The boy said. The girl nodded. I'm excited to learn more on Avalon too, but even I know when it's time to take a break. Though it's so hard to do. She said. Patience, it's a virtue, a heavenly virtue. The boy said before going into deep thought. Well, patience is going to keep me awake at night. The girl said. You sound like you are starving. Starving for knowledge. The boy said with a small chuckle. The girl looked down for a moment. Well, I won't be satisfied until I get more knowledge. She said. Then you need to practice chastity, another virtue. The boy said before resting for the night. Once again, the group of S-class missing ninja known as the Akatsuki found themselves meeting again. Only to be surprised by results of their mission. The supposed leader, currently identifying himself as Pain, knew this was a big risk but had a big payout as a result should the mission had succeeded. Only to find Itachi as the only survivor despite having sent 4 members of his group to Konoha during the invasion. You had best explain yourself, Itachi. How did you lose your partner as well as the immortal duo? Pain asked. Itachi exhaled a lot of air. If I were any less experienced, I would say a literal monster did this. One that made Kisame look like a roll of sushi. He said, earning a scoff. That alone prompted Kisame to stay behind and fend off the new threat. He explained. That explains almost nothing. Pain said, sounding annoyed. Did the 3 Jinchuriki work together? He asked. Itachi shook his head. It was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki alone. When I had caught him in my Tsukuyomi, I stumbled upon something stronger and more dangerous than the Bijuu themselves. He said, but Pain did not take it seriously. The man who had gone so far to call himself a god and that peace is achieved through human eradication, says a lot. Then again, if this were Greek mythology, then Pain would fit right in. As he saw himself as greater than man and that he could do no wrong. Even going as far as to believe that nothing could stop him or his ambitions. I doubt something that powerful could exist. Pain said. In the background, a man in an orange spiral mask watched from his hidden corner. Looking at Pain with eyes of disappointment. Realizing that Pain was too arrogant and in his current state, the man is a great danger and deal great damage that many villages cannot handle. However, he was far from reaching the true potential anyone else with those eyes had. Then you are entitled to your opinion, Leader Sama. However, it does not excuse that this being had killed Killer B, well in Bijuu form, as well as the immortal duo, before Kisame decided to recklessly take him on. Itachi replied. Kisame was never a friend to Itachi, and that did not matter. The man was bloodthirsty and always open to a fight. So he saw Naruto's new form as a fun challenge. Ironically, it was Hayden who saw Naruto as a perfect sacrifice, and while he was the weakling of this organization, Hayden was the first to fall permanently. Minato took his chance and thought Naruto's heart must be worth more than the ones he currently had with the power he displayed. Yet that ended the same way as it did with Hayden, but even then, Minato attempted to cut his losses and failed. And how powerful could the Kyuubi Jinchuriki have gotten? Pain asked. The boy hid his skills somehow. That aside, he did something no other human has done. Itachi said. Itachi scared all of a sudden. Deidara mocked before being silenced. He ripped out Hayden's soul after ripping him apart. I am not sure if that happened to Kisame or if he fell like a warrior. Itachi continued to explain. Similar to my human path. No, how would a boy not even 15 years of age obtain such a power? Pain thought. And what of the Jinchuriki? Is the Hachibi really deceased and the Nibi imprisoned? He asked. The Hachibi I am mostly certain, but I have heard rumors as to how quick-witted he is. It could be a trick, Itachi said as he wasn't sure what was going on anymore. No matter, we will have to push back out goal another 3 years and find new recruits by then. Pain said as he had confidence in obtaining the Bijuu. Especially with rumors of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's death. We will have to claim the Kyuubi by then. Especially as most of the villages are at their weakest. He said. And what about the news in Konoha's third attack? Isn't it fishy that something inhuman just attacked recently? Deidara asked as he felt there was some sort of conspiracy in the background. Be quiet, Deidara, the Jinchuriki is dead. Every village minus Iwa is practically in shambles. Now we have to wait 3 years for our goal to be completed. Sasori said as he didn't want to hear any whining. Sasori is correct, we will meet again in 3 years unless an important update to goal is complete. Pain said as the meeting ended. Meanwhile, the spiral masked man had to think about adjusting his goals. All of this was disturbing, but in the end, his insane mind pushed away any doubt that something would impede his goal. Konoha, several days later. Fillmore stumbled closer towards the village walls. The fox winced as his pain was too much to handle and he gave into his wounds. Causing him to collapse as he lied outside one side of the walls of Konoha. Hoping that he would regain his strength soon without causing a disturbance since he believed he would be attacked just for being a fox. Bigots, the lot of them. Fillmore thought as he tried to limit his resting. I could flare my chakra, but that's going to be a real pain when the wrong people find me. He thought. A few minutes passed by and Fillmore still felt like he was on death's doorstep. He cursed the fact that he had to run into Lily of all people. Especially, letting her transform and amping up her own strength. It only further concerned him if Lilia's other companions were also unsealed. Failing to put the stressful thoughts away, Fillmore lost consciousness and fell asleep. But Ban. The blue-haired immortal sighed as he sat on the ground next to the grave. The damn thing was hollow, but even then. There was still some form of spiritual presence around it. At least, that's what Ban believed. Philosophy aside, Ban pulled out a small flask and began to open it up. Hey kid, I know it's been a while. As far as I know, I'm probably leaving a message or something. I can't tell when you're home or not. Ban said with a chuckle. He took a quick drink before speaking again. Hey, don't judge me. It's not booze, I just really like this thing. Besides, baby is on the way and he let out a loud sigh. Ban wiped his face as if he was feeling exhausted. He took a long deep breath before exhaling as he looked back at the grave. I swear on Kami, or whatever divine creature is watching us. Life really wants to kick me where it hurts. Ban said as he looked away. I swear, I lose Elaine and go through a lot of things to get her back. Then I almost lost her again when I thought Melascula was dead. Luckily, we found her again and kept her sealed in a bottle for most of the time. He says remembering battling the commandment of faith. They tried to kill Melascula, but it ended with Merlin temporarily sealing her in a jar. Then the rest is practically history. Ban didn't want to think about the past anymore, but the grief still kills him. It's like when you know and understand a sad fact of life. Yet you're just horribly terrified or badly affected when that fact finally affects you. And all of this. I swear, it's still too much. Ban said as he rubbed his eyes. I swear, we should have just went your other plan once the boar hat was thought out. He said as he yawned. As some sort of doomsday scenario. When Naruto was a lot younger, he made a plan by drawing out a plan to break the barrier around the boar hat. The plan would involve them sneaking out of the village and traveling the road with the boar hat as a business. Especially back then when Naruto did not completely trust Hiruzen. Though Ban objected since a giant pig with a tavern on its back would attract a lot of attention. And again, Meliodas did it very casually and he was a wanted man for 10 years. Although, the kingdom pretty much was very inaccurate with his description since his portrait was of an older adult man than his childlike appearance. Who am I kidding? It would have been a risk in any shape or form. Ban said before letting out a laugh. Still kid, I'm gonna miss having your energy around. Picking fights, making all of that food, making a crap load of clones to get spare cash from the D-rank missions, and even your song playing. He said as he wiped away a tear. That sounds fun. The kid would have been a better owner than me. Ban turned his head to find his best friend standing behind him. How long have you been there? Ban asked with wide eyes. Enough to see how much of a softie you became. Meliodas said with a smile. Ban glared at him. Shut up. He said. Meliodas decided to take a seat next to him. Still, sorry about everything. I mean, it's not like I expected things to turn out this way. I never even met the kid outside of his dreams that one time. He said sounding solemn. Ban sighed. Things happen, we can't prepare for them. He said. Even when the rules of the dead are basically ignored. We can't break them like we used to. Meliodas said as he faced his grandson's grave. Captain, when did we become such downers? Ban asked, surprising Meliodas. I mean, it was the 7 of us for 6 years. Then we get betrayed, then get back together only for a new holy war to take place, and next thing I know I'm trapped in a fox. Unaware of what I am for 1,000 years or however long it's been. He said sounding frustrated. Hey, it worked out didn't it? I mean before Zeldra suddenly came back and we had to seal everyone away. We at least prepared for when that fox and its siblings arrived. Meliodas said. If you can call it ready. Still, where did it even come from? Ban asked. The guy with the purple eyes remember? Some weird stuff was going on at the other side of the continent. Then there was that pale guy with the yellow eye. Meliodas explained. Are you messing with me? What the hell are you talking about? Ban asked. Meliodas felt confused. What are you talking about? How do you not remember all of that? He asked. I was fighting and beating the damn fox. I got possessed after it decided to be a sore loser. Ban replied. Meliodas' sweat dropped. I do not remember that. He said bluntly. Are you kidding me? Ban asked angrily. Seriously Ban, I know the fox is a big jerk, but you two never fought. In fact, he didn't possess you. So what are you on about? Meliodas asked. Ban groaned. Okay, are you senile or something? He asked. Meliodas felt concerned now. I think one or both of us have our stories mixed up. He said. With Merlin and King. Merlin looked at King with a raised brow. I know our captain was dead set on maintaining his business of running a tavern. Yet, I can't help but feel that some of you want to turn this into a legitimate office space. She said. What's that supposed to mean? King asked with a look of confusion. Merlin proceeded to pull out the other items, including this pen. We also have paper and an envelope. She said. Actually, this could all just function as stationery. Maybe a mailing service will be another good business idea. She said. Merlin, I really doubt this is just an ordinary pen. Jurheed told me she found this when approached by someone claiming to be the previous fairy king. King explained. Merlin pondered a bit about this information. I do not doubt your suspicions, King. I'm just saying there's a strange pattern that I have yet to realize. She said while scanning the pen. Suddenly, from the pen came out a message as when done with the paper and letter. Chastity. That's interesting, that makes 3 now. Merlin said. 3 of what? King asked. Before Merlin could answer, they heard the loud sounds of thunder. Merlin raised a brow as she looked out the window to see sunny skies. There was no sign of clouds today. In fact, the weather outside started to feel a bit warm as spring was about a month or 2 away. This village has some unique weather. Merlin said before hearing more thunder. Though, I suppose someone could be training too close by. She said before hearing a loud crash in the distance. Sounds like some intense training. King commented. Only for Merlin to narrow her eyes. I doubt training alone could cause something this deliberate. She said. As Merlin could see a lot of smoke in the distance. Outside the manor. As Meliodas and Ban were heading back inside to ask Gother about their conflicting memories. The two stopped as they heard all of the thunder. Along with the sight of fire in the distance. What the hell was that? Ban asked. Whatever it is, Dil is in a lot of trouble. Meliodas said. I don't think your pink-haired fanboy is responsible. Ban said, doubting Gilthander would be that clumsy. You want to check it out? We can bother Gother later. Meliodas asked. Ban shrugged. I guess anything is worth taking my mind off things. He said. When suddenly he had an idea. Captain, I have a genius idea. He said, catching the attention of Meliodas. A few minutes later. Beside the boar hat came out a strange wooden vehicle. One that looked like a mix of a rickshaw and a carriage. The carriage design making up most of the vehicle with the front part being exposed for the coachman to sit. Wait, so you need someone to drive this but at the same time. Someone needs to pull on it. Meliodas asked. Ban frowned. Well, if you put it that way. I like it. Meliodas interrupted as Eskener came out. The Sin of Pride was dressed in a brown jacket, wearing special gloves and an aviator hat with goggles that he was adjusting. Clearly, Eskener was more than ready if not eager to lead the way. Saddle up, gentlemen, our journey will soon begin. Eskener said. Actually, the captain made a point. What exactly is going to get us moving? Ban asked, now realizing that there is no point of a coachman. Eskener looked at the vehicle and pondered. Before returning a minute later with Hawk and a carrot tied to a stick. I'm not a horse. Hawk whined. Now Hawk, I am trying to negotiate with you like a civil adult. I offer you down payment for your services along with payment after the job is done. Eskener explained. I don't like carrots either. Hawk argued. Ban's sweat dropped. You ate his cooking, but you hate carrots. He asked as he pointed at Meliodas. How about some tasty scraps? Meliodas suggested. Hawk shook his head. No. Your grandson made me some real food before. Your food tastes gross now. Hawk yelled. Meliodas tilted his head in confusion. It can't be that bad. The little guy inherited my skills after all. He said. You wish. Hawk replied. That's when Merlin arrived. I was about to head into town when I heard all of the arguing. She said. Nothing is wrong, Merlin. Hawk is being unreasonable and demanding too much. Meliodas said, uncaring of Hawk's plight. I am being abused. I don't want to be paid to carry a giant piece of wood for a single carrot. Hawk argued. Eskener promised you another one at the end. Meliodas said. That and a radish. Eskener said. Hawk sighed. I am underappreciated. He said. That's when Merlin bent down and smiled at the pig. Hawk, how about I negotiate with you? I have a much better offer. She asked as Hawk still looked hesitant. Yet another few minutes later. Through some charismatic words, some praise, and promise of good payment mixed with a cube made of the meat of a beast. Hawk became a giant with horns on his head. Now the large pig hybrid was ready to pull on the vehicle once the handles were tied to his back. Leaving Ban to further think about adjusting his invention as he can already sense a lot of trouble ahead. Though Meliodas was cool with the idea and thought there was a chance for innovation. To the center of town then. Eskener said as he adjusted his seat. Whatever is on fire is likely burned down by now. Gother said out of nowhere. When did you get here? Ban asked. Gother adjusted his glasses as he answered. I saw Merlin's experiment and wanted to see what was going on. He said. Just get on, we'll explain on the way. Ban said as Gother nodded. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Gother, do you think you can help us with something? Ban and I can't agree on a certain event from a long time ago. Meliodas asked. King Bartra vomited the dinner you made for him, Captain. He did not enjoy it. Gother answered. No, not that. I'll tell you later. Meliodas said. Yip yip. Escanor said as he signaled for Hawk to move. Hopefully the road is big enough for Hawk to fit. Merlin said. Merlin, where we're going. We don't need roads. Meliodas replied. Yes we do, Captain. Merlin said with a confused look on her face. Not if we take a good shortcut, I know. Head northwest, Escanor. Meliodas ordered. You heard him, Hawk. Escanor said as he steered Hawk towards another direction. Back to the Future Ost main theme. It would not last too long until Ban and everyone else realized that Meliodas was blatantly lying. That or he had a vague memory of the landscape and assumed the random path was safe for driving. It was not. At the center of the village. Herodias continued to coordinate nearby shinobi to put out the fire. The current Hokage looked around the sky while seeking out the cause of the attack. As the lightning seemed too natural to be a lightning jutsu and the weather is still fair without a single cloud. So, she immediately signaled for her hidden Anbu security to follow her next command. I want one of you to return to your headquarters. I need a team to scout out the cause of this incident. Herodias said as one of the Anbu left to follow her command. But that done, the investigation would be put on a brief pause. As Herodias suddenly heard a lot of rustling nearby and saw a giant hawk making his way towards the center where the accident happened. She sighed as she saw half of the 7 deadly sins present on the vehicle they attached Hawk to. I think they are gaining too much attention. It's a mystery as to how they are not as famous now as they were all those years ago. Herodias thought as everyone but Escanor got off. Keep the ignition warm. Ban said as he got off. Escanor nodded, understood. He said as had some warm hot dogs next to him. Hey, can I have another one of those? Hawk asked. As Escanor prepared a sausage to feed Hawk with. A rather fancy-looking gentleman stood close to the vehicle. The gentleman had a fancy-looking kimono and was surrounded by young servants with bags. Oh my, what do you call this contraption? Better yet, what is it? The gentleman curiously asked. This device is currently untitled, good sir, but its use is for transport between long distances. Escanor answered. Sir, if I may. This just looks like a mix of a rickshaw and a carriage. Only there's a giant boar maneuvering it. One of the servants said. I'm a pig, racist. Hawk said as he ate his hot dog. The gentleman nodded, extraordinary. He muttered much to the shock of the servants. Sir, how much will you charge to escort me across the village? He asked. Escanor was about to decline when Ban suddenly came running up and gave Escanor a big list of prices. Escanor then adjusted his goggles and read the list. How many people and how far exactly? Escanor asked. With everyone else. Ban decided to approach Herodias about the situation, so what's up with the random fire? He asked. Lightning from the looks of it, but there's no sign of it being ninjutsu. There's also the clear fact that the weather is fine. Herodias answered. Ban nodded, you have a case of odd weather. Any ideas, Captain? He asked. Meliodas, now wearing a deerstalker hat and an inverse cape, looked puzzled. I saw we look at the damage. Maybe there was traps set up there. He said. The trap? Herodias asked. You guys are sneaky ninjas. Maybe someone got crafty. Meliodas suggested. I suppose that is possible, Captain. I've heard of more strange abilities in this new time. Merlin said as she also sounded intrigued. An hour later, on the roof. Merlin did not look amused. Captain, I would prefer it if you did more than just stare at things with a magnifying glass. She said. But it's the little things below the somewhat big things that hide from the naked eye, Merlin. Meliodas said in an attempt to sound like a capable detective. Also, are we charging by the hour or day? He asked. We're doing this for free. Merlin answered. Meliodas frowned. We're going to die with this new economy. He said. We won't have to work much longer. I think I found something. Merlin said as she pulled out one of her books. What's the answer, Detective Merlin? Meliodas asked. The lightning was not entirely natural. Somehow the weather was manipulated and functioned almost like a puppeteer magic. Merlin explained. Meliodas nodded, so the clouds are fake. He said. No, someone either manipulated or summoned the clouds to strike TH Tower. Merlin corrected. I see. Meliodas said with a nod. You do not know what's going on, do you? Merlin asked. I do not. Meliodas confirmed. Gother quickly joined them. My questioning of the locals has proven fruitless. They only witnessed a random thunder strike and nothing else. He said. And what about individuals inside of the building? Meliodas asked as he pulled out a smoke pipe. Gother shook his head, hardly any of them saw anything, and I did use my magic to make sure no one attempted to deceive me. He said. So there was no one from the inside that caused the lightning to strike. He added. Merlin squinted her eyes as she looked at the destruction. Gother, what was the extent of your master's control? She asked. Why do you ask? Gother asked. I remember that your creator was powerful and a genius. He was imprisoned in another dimension, and yet he could still speak and act through your body when not giving you free will. Merlin explained. I would say he saw and spoke through me whenever he pleased. Gother replied. Merlin, I get what you mean, but there is no way someone that powerful could have messed with the clouds like that. Gother's creator was pretty skilled, and that would mean anyone anywhere in the continent could have made that cloud appear. Meliodas said with some doubts. Merlin continued thinking, perhaps, but while anywhere in the continent would be difficult. Who's to say that the attacker is not close by? She asked. Even with the recent assaults, you cannot attack an important administration building on a whim without some thought. She said. Some quiet, skilled and intelligent could have planned this. Gother said as he starts thinking as well. I'll go see what man figures out. Meliodas said as he leaves the roof. Still, magic in this new era is weird. Not everyone gets a random magic type. If Merlin's right, we might have another mess on our hands. He thought. But Fillmore. The fox opened his eyes and found himself in the forest surrounded by fairies. The fairies looked kind enough to put him in a makeshift bed with a bowl of fruit nearby. Fillmore groaned as he sat up and tried to get his bearings. That must have been some hangover last night. Fillmore muttered before remembering his situation. Aw crap, where did I put it? Don't tell me I lost it. He groaned. That's when one of the fairies arrived. Hey little guy, you were banged up when we found you. They said. Thanks, you fairies are alright. Fillmore said. Anyways, did you see some kind of packet nearby? It's empty, but it's super important. He asked. The fairy nodded. I thought it was important, so I didn't throw it away. They said. I meant by the way. I was with my friend Pure when we found you passed out on the ground. She explained. Thanks and, anyways, who is in charge? I got some important business in the village. Fillmore asked. Are you sure? You look like you need rest. End asked. I'm fine. Fillmore said before hearing a lot of bones crack. Okay, maybe another hour in the bed. He said before lying back down. What happened to you anyways? You were all hurt when we found you. End asked. Fillmore groaned. I ran into a crazy woman with an inferiority complex. He answered, which only created more confusion. By the way, have you seen a file folder? It's empty, but the folder itself is important. He asked. End thought about it. Oh yeah, we weren't sure if it was important. So we put it somewhere safe. I'll get it for you if you want. He said. Fillmore lied down for a few minutes in an attempt to relax his back. Only sitting back up once End came back with the file folder. Fillmore smiled as he picked up the file from End's hands. Thanks, anyway, since I'm still hurt and can't move. Can you tell me where I am? Fillmore asked. The forest of Konoha, a secret part, so don't tell anyone. End said. Fillmore nodded. Got it, besides I don't like humans. He said as he tried stretching his arms. Actually, since we're in Konoha. Are the 7 deadly sins around? He asked, surprising End. Thinking about it now, End realized that Fillmore likely knows that she's a fairy based on appearance. However, that wasn't a natural thing as there are too few people left from the era of Britannia. Don't worry, you can trust me. Only I need to get this file to them. Fillmore said, trying to gain End's trust. Though it would be difficult since fairies aren't trusting of most outsiders, I would bring it myself, but I'm pretty hurt and I don't think I should be moved. He said. End looked hesitant. I should probably bring it up with the others. She said. Thanks, seriously, that helps a lot. That or at least letting me stay to heal so I can deliver it myself. Fillmore said with a chuckle. Okay, maybe that second part would have been more reasonable to mention first. He said. I'll go now, do you need anything else? End asked. I'm good, I'm gonna eat and maybe have another nap. Fillmore answered as the pink-haired fairy left. Now, this was just another waiting game. One that would lead up to a whole other level of trouble. In the Hokage's office. Herodias looked troubled as she looked over a new report, the Kurama clan. She asked as she started reading some files. It wouldn't be too long before the current Hokage started asking for the 7 deadly sins to appear. In time, the 3 present members were given a small explanation on the Kurama clan. Where she ended up revealing the clan's speciality for Genjutsu and how their heiress has an extraordinary talent for it. Though even now, Herodias is trying her best to understand the situation with the girl. However, she was able to see that the heiress was able to make illusions feel real. To the extent that whatever she makes up will happen. So, basically some girl thought about lightning hitting the tower and made it happen. Ban asked. That's the idea, but not entirely accurate. Herodias said. I know I should not be sending you in there without more information. However, it seems that the heiress, Yakumo, is under attack. I fear that she may have been manipulated into causing that lightning strike. She said. I think we've handled worse. Meliodas said. Besides, it's not like we need the whole team, right? Ban asked. I'm sure Diane and King can hold down the fort. Escanor might be overkill depending on who's attacking who. Meliodas explained. Ban grinned. You want him to keep giving people rides for money too, don't you? He asked. I'm a businessman first, Ban. Meliodas admitted. Let's not forget that genjutsu is a matter of attacking the mind. Our senses can be dulled, and for the worst case scenario, Gother's magic can free us should we somehow find ourselves trapped. Merlin explained. I got my seals to null an attack on my mind. Ban said but agreed with the plan. So where do we go from here? He asked. The Kurama clan's property is here. Herodias answered as she wrote down the location. I guess we are tree huggers if one clan wants to live far into the trees. Ban said as he took the note. Then let's go. Meliodas said excitedly. I'll try to send in an extra team with a Hyuga. Just in case things do not go as planned. Herodias said as they left. Got it. We'll be done before they get there. Ban said confidently. At the Kurama clan grounds. A brief while later, Escanor returned to pick up his friends and made his way towards the forest where the Kurama clan lived. Hawk ran with great vigor as Escanor continued to feed him. However, as Hawk enjoyed his snacks and continued to run, Gother realized something slightly concerning. Escanor, when you feed Hawk, does he know the contents of the sausages you give him? Gother asked. Escanor let out a laugh. Gother, well, I'm happy to hear that you're concerned for Hawk's well-being. I'm not feeding him pork sausages. They're purely chicken. I double-checked the label when I looked through the pantry. He explained. They make sausages from poultry? Gother asked. All sorts of fowls. Escanor answered as he grabbed another sausage. Then again, the locals tend to eat raw fish in the form of sushi. So a different ingredient is nothing strange to me by this point. He said. Hey, speaking of food, how was the boar hat? I tried cleaning the place up but it's ready to fall apart. Meliodas asked. Anne snickered. Oh boy, I'm going to be depressed and mourning again when that thing falls apart. He said, remembering all the nostalgic memories of that tavern. I should really take out all the booze before that place collapses. He said. That doesn't answer my question. Meliodas said. Well, the kid said that if things ever went horribly wrong, we would pack up and travel on the road with the tavern. To be fair, we did try establishing the place again in the outskirts, but business sucked. Ban explained. I will always remember the amazing pancakes. Gother said. And I don't want to remember the kid scraping pancakes out of your stomach. Ban replied. Hold on, Gother, if you are a doll. How are you able to taste food? That just occurred to me. Escanor asked before noticing everyone was gone. The man sighed. I see I've somehow alienated everyone. He said as he noticed his strange rickshaw carriage is now empty. Then he came falling out of the vehicle as Hawk removed himself before running into the forest by himself. Escanor felt sad and alone now that his friends had abandoned him. But what felt worse is how damp the sun looked in the sky. That's not right. The sun should be bright. It's more powerful than the world. Escanor said as he looked at the sky. Where the sky began to glow brightly, yes, but not bright enough. Even greater. Not so much as it burns the world, it may be able to do that, but it is benevolent. The sun is mighty strong. With great light that opens the path to the blind and blinds the arrogant. He exclaimed with great excitement. Escanor never noticed the plant slowly wrapping around him. As two shinobi with similar clan crests slowly moved up to him. When Escanor suddenly transformed into his muscular self. Yes. Nothing can combat the sun and I, Escanor. It's equivalent. Escanor said in his mighty voice. Before the Konoha shinobi could attack Escanor and register his appearance. The sun itself started to flare and its solar rays began to burn the pair while Escanor soaked in it like any normal man would with water. With everyone else. As they were talking, Escanor suddenly dropped his glasses and became his muscular self. As he screamed about how amazing he and the sun are. Several Konoha ninja fell out of the trees screaming in pain as the rickshaw carriage collapsed during the drive. Escanor. You're losing control of yourself and the vehicle. Merlin warned. Escanor suddenly registered the presence of his comrades. I see, you all realize how detrimental I am to your group that you all decided to come back. He said before Hawk crashed into a tree. Resulting in everyone flying out of the rickshaw carriage. Which also ended up breaking apart during the accident. The damn thing was already faulty in design, it's not like this was meant to travel for too long. That's it. Escanor isn't allowed to drive. Ban yelled as he stood up. Escanor scoffed, is it the fault of the coachman? Perhaps it's the fault of the ungrateful passengers. He said with crossed arms. The coachman obviously. Meliodas said bluntly. Enough, Escanor, what happened to you? You suddenly looked exhausted and released your true form. Merlin asked. Escanor looked confused. Me? Tired. I was fine until you all left on your own. Hawk went down his own path and then I realized how weak the sun looked. However, it was strange to see how weak the sun is until I had to remind it of how powerful it's supposed to be. He explained. Jutsu. Ban said before noticing the Konoha shinobi. Escanor's weaker self got caught in an illusion. Then his arrogant self got free and burned those idiots. He explained. Wow, elite illusionists with no rivals somehow burned themselves in their own illusion. Meliodas said sarcastically. To be fair, Captain, as I have read. Jutsu is capable of dulling all 5 senses, so of course they will feel pain. Gother explained as he adjusted his glasses. Then again, it's quite pathetic to see someone hurt themselves with their own illusion. He added. I'm questioning one of them. Ban said as he grabbed one of the screaming shinobi. At the Kurama clan manor. Upon threatening the Kurama clan shinobi who attacked them, Ban was told that they were targeting Yakumo Kurama for reasons they refused to explain. Which left them with having Gother dig into their minds. And they believe Yakumo-san is somehow capable of destroying their clan as well the village itself. Gother said as they went inside. So what should we do then? If the kid is responsible for the fire, we arrest her? Meliodas asked. I already considered this mission to be a wild goose chase. Should the girl, Yakumo, and her clan not be responsible, then we still have to investigate that random attack from earlier. Merlin said as she can tell something is definitely wrong here. Then perhaps we should split up. 2 of us can guard the entryway and the rest can seek out clues. Gother said. I will lead the investigating team. Gother, I may need you in case these illusions became too hectic. Merlin said. Escanor adjusted his glasses, then I'll go. You guys are the heavy hitters, so you can guard the doorway. Meliodas interrupted. Escanor sighed, very well, Captain. He said as he waited outside with Ban. We'll try to meet up again in an hour at the latest. Meliodas said as he followed Merlin and Gother inside. Escanor took a seat on the grass. This will test my patience, waiting for cowards to attack me with illusions. Pathetic. He said. Just wait, big guy, they'll come out soon. Ban said as he heard leaves rustling. Then the sight of a giant trail of dust rising into the air. Escanor immediately stood his ground and ran at the potential threat. That's when Ban realized who was coming, but even with his own speed. He couldn't stop Escanor, who was already in attack mode. No need to fear. The cavalry has arrived. Might Guy yelled as he came running in. Unfortunately, Escanor surprised him and immediately tried to hit him. Guy managed to reduce the impact of Escanor's godly strength and was lucky to have his weights. Because those things were the only things that were actually destroyed in the result of the attack. Though Guy would have to be careful for a moment as his legs felt quite numb. Calm down there, my muscular comrade. Guy said as he landed on his hand. Oh, you surprised me there. Escanor said. I laughed, think nothing of it, though it would be preferred that you save the punches for a real fight or even a spar. He said with a thumbs up. You are very eccentric. Escanor said. Ban sighed as he saw the interaction and wondered if Meliodas and the rest were having a more interesting time inside of the clan manor. Meanwhile, in the forest. Though not anywhere near the Forest of Death or the section where the fairies have declared their new home. Konohamaru's group was out in the woods collecting certain plants for an assignment for Iruka's class. Is this right, Yuden? Mogi asked as she showed her spectacled friend a plant. Yuden gave the girl a tired look as he checked the list. I think so, let's add it to the basket. He said. Konohamaru sighed. How long are we supposed to be out here? He asked as he was the one carrying the basket on his back. Just 4 more plants, Konohamaru. Yuden said. But what's the point? We're not gardeners, we're ninjas. Konohamaru said. Mogi sighed. Konohamaru, I know this is boring and trust me, I hate Suzume-sensei's flower class. Except this might come in handy on a real mission. She said. Yeah, we can figure out which plants could kill us so we can avoid them. Yuden said in agreement. Okay, not as extreme like Yuden thinks, but you get the point. Mogi interjected. Konohamaru sighed. I feel like we should be getting fit. All we've been doing is looking around for plants and we can't even find the right ones quickly enough. He said. Before the group could argue about their school assignment, they heard some sticks breaking which they initially ignored. The academy students assumed the sounds were from an animal moving around. However, they soon noticed someone was in proximity of them. Konohamaru was the first to notice that they were not alone. There was a little girl around their age wearing an orange dress with a white undershirt. The girl looked lost as she wandered around the forest by herself. Hey. You shouldn't be wandering the forest by yourself. Konohamaru shouts. The girl looked at Konohamaru in surprise. I'm just looking for my mama. She said. Did she leave you by yourself? Yuden asked. No, Mama just forgot to pick me up. The girl answered. You were abandoned? The trio asked. The girl got teary-eyed. No. Mama was busy finding us a house. She said defensively. The kids felt bad, they didn't entirely understand the situation. Yet as future shinobi, they had to defend their home and their people. For Konohamaru, his uncle Asuma always said something about protecting the king, but he didn't understand what that meant. So Asuma dumbed it down and said that they need to protect the future generation. Then we can help find her mom. Konohamaru said. That sounds tough. Yuden said. But not impossible. Come on Yuden, are you a quitter or a ninja? Konohamaru asked. Yuden adjusted his glasses, is it too late to be change occupations? He asked. Konohamaru turned to his female teammate, are you a quitter or a ninja Mogi? He asked. Ninja obviously. Mogi answered. I'll give in to peer pressure then. Yuden said as he hangs his head. The girl smiled, you'll really help me? She asked. Yeah. Let's go check in the village. Konohamaru said. Village? But I can feel her around here. The girl said. Wait, then you already know? Mogi asked. I think so, I can feel her energy around here. The girl said before running off into another direction. Hey. Slow down. Konohamaru yelled. You can't run on your own. Mogi yelled. Sadly, the girl in the orange dress started to run faster like Rock Lee. Back at the manor. Elizabeth was trying to set up a garden with the help of her sister Veronica. Kind of as a way to help add more beautiful aesthetics to her new home. As she worked, she could hear a lot of training in the distance. I actually expected you to be training and Margaret helping. Not the other way around. Elizabeth said with a giggle. Veronica smiled at her sister, I think the sword can take a rest. Besides, how long has it been since I spent time with you Ellie? She asked. And what of Margaret? Elizabeth asked. Margaret felt helpless and Gil has to help her train. Veronica said before hearing an ugly noise. Though, I think maybe some basic martial arts would do her better. She said. Perhaps I could say the same about you and handling the plants. Elizabeth said. Veronica looked down at her work and looked depressed. The whole thing was a mess and it just looked like Veronica stabbed the ground and scooped up random holes in the ground. She may have been a princess, but not a peaceful loving wallflower type that most people believe a princess should be. Maybe I should have trained instead. Veronica said. I can train you to garden better. Elizabeth suggested. Veronica sighed, I don't really want to learn. How hard is it anyways? I'm just stuffing seeds underground aren't I? She asked. Some water, sunlight and done right? She asked. The physical process is quite delicate. Elizabeth said when she felt another presence. Veronica sighed again, maybe someone can help us plant these flowers. She said. Veronica, those aren't for growing flowers. This is yeast. Elizabeth said followed by a long pause. Veronica slapped her forehead, Ellie, I'm starting to think I'm not the only clumsy one here. She said. Why on this strange earth are we planting yeast in the front yard? She asked. I originally picked out some carnations, but Ban said he really needed the yeast. Elizabeth answered, slightly frightened by her sister's frustration. Then why the front of the mansion? This isn't a farm. Veronica said. Elizabeth's face turned red from embarrassment, I was so caught up in the moment. Besides, you look so happy that I didn't think it would matter. She said. Wait a moment, these are seeds. Does yeast even come from a seed? Veronica asked. While Elizabeth lost her curse, regained her memories and resurrected she wasn't omniscient. Leaving her wondering if she was literally doing the right thing. Though Elizabeth isn't the ditzy klutz she was when Meliodas turned her into waitress. She still did a bad job at understanding the logic of agriculture. Ellie, I understand and accept that you have lived other lives. So were you ever a farmer at one point? Veronica asked. Elizabeth thought it over, honestly, I can hardly remember most of lives. I don't remember working on a field. She said. I think we need help. Veronica said. When suddenly, they saw a giant trail of dust heading their way. Veronica and Elizabeth moved out of the way as the knights came running in. As they prepared for whoever or whatever was coming. They heard the Konohamaru corps yelling in the distance. You can't run over there. You're going to hit someone. How is she that fast? The dust trail began to slow down as the running figure was revealed to the girl. Out of fear and surprise, Hoser was the first to strike his sword as he thought this was a threat. Instead, the girl jumped to the side and jumped again. Only this time, the girl jumped over Hoser and then landed on his head before jumping off. Resulting in Hoser's face crashing into the dirt. I think you need to double your training Hoser. Gilthander said. Hoser quickly recovered, what hit me? He asked. Everyone noticed the little girl who looked happy and curious. Everyone felt confused as to who this child was and how skilled she was to drop Hoser like that. He may chop liver, but Hoser is definitely stronger than a generic jounin in this day and age. So it was concerning that a child was able to react and move that quickly. Elizabeth, however, wanted to be gentle as to not threaten the girl. She squatted down and met the girl at eye level. "Hello young lady, who might you be?" Elizabeth asked. "My name is Anna and I'm looking for my mama. Does she live here? I sensed her energy earlier," she said. The Konohamaru Corps finally arrived. "Sorry everyone. That little girl is lost," Konohamaru said as he pointed at Anna. Elizabeth continued chatting with Anna. "Anna, are you sure? Only my family and friends live here," she said. Anna nodded. "Yes ma'am, my mama definitely lives here. I can feel her energy. Is she home right now?" she asked. "Who is your mother, if you don't mind my asking?" Elizabeth asked. "She has dark hair, gold eyes, uses magic and walks around in her underwear," Anna answered. "Sounds like an exotic person," Veronica said, only thinking about the underwear part. "Though the description sounded familiar, do you know your mama's name?" Elizabeth asked. Anna looked contemplative. "Merlin," she answered. And thus everyone became silent. "Come again?" Elizabeth asked. "Merlin is my mama. I even did lots of homework to make her proud," Anna said as she reached into a pocket in her dress. Diane whispered to King, "Merlin is a mother?" she asked. King shrugged. "She treats Arthur like he's related," he replied. Elizabeth stared at Anna as the girl dug into her pockets. Despite the girl being blonde with blue eyes, Elizabeth started remembering Merlin when she first met the woman. It could be the fact that Anna claims that Merlin is her mother, but Elizabeth could see the resemblance between Anna and Merlin as a child. "Look what I made," Anna said as she presented a slime. "I see, it's a wonderful." Elizabeth was cut off by the slime opening its eyes. "It's alive?" she asked. Anna nodded. "Yes, he can't speak, but he can think and move on his own. His name is Mordred and I wanted to impress my mama when I found her," she said. Margaret decided to approach the girl. "Anna, is it? Can you tell us who your father is?" she asked. Anna looked confused. "I don't have lots of memories of Papa. I know he's strong and super smart but he's a bit weird. I just know Mama and Papa love each other," he said. "What's your papa's name?" Elizabeth asked. Anna shrugged. "I can't remember," she answered. The sisters looked at each other in question as they wondered where Anna came from and if she was telling the truth. As they pondered on what to do with her, Arthur came out of the mansion with a look of concern on his face. "I heard a crash. Is everything alright?" Arthur asked. No one noticed this as all eyes were on Arthur, but Anna's lively blue eyes became dark and cold. Her cheerful look was replaced of one with disgust as Arthur appeared. The slime in her hand started to stir around before jumping high into the air and crashing into Arthur's face. Anna quickly switched to looking concerned as she tried to pull off her slime. "No Mordred. You can't pick fights," Anna yells as she pries off her slime. "Did I say something to offend someone?" Arthur asked. As everyone helped Arthur stand back up, they didn't notice Anna's cold look as she stroked her slime. Except Yuden, who briefly looked at Anna, but her scary stare forced him into staying silent. Back at the Kurama clan manor, Merlin, Gother and Meliodas continued to make their way through the manor. On the way, they could see that the environment started to look a bit distorted. That or perhaps the building was not maintained very well as the Kurama clan was not as famous as the Hyuga or Sarutobi clans. So they likely didn't have the massive economy that those clans have, despite having a unique bloodline. "I thought these clans were supposed to be privileged," Meliodas said. "Some clans are less fortunate, Captain. Perhaps they are looked down upon because their powers aren't as appealing to the eyes," Gother said. "You mean flashy?" Meliodas asked. "Precisely," Gother said. "Unlike the kingdoms and knights, hidden villages and shinobi are basically more organized and disciplined versions of bands of knights," he explained. "In other words, paid mercenaries, but then again the system confuses me as well," Merlin said. "The future is weird. I wanted to see flying machines," Meliodas said, looking uninterested in modern events. "Then again, I can agree with society. Sometimes flashy techniques are cool to watch," he added. Merlin stopped the group in its tracks. "I am tired of this," she said, confusing the men. Merlin then raised her hand. "Absolute cancel," she said, causing a pair of doors to appear. Apparently, the doors were either hidden or they entered an illusion where the group would be forced to move inside of an endless hallway. "Hey look, the walls look refurbished," Meliodas pointed out. "Then we are already in the presence of another illusion," Merlin said as she opened the doors. Meliodas drew his sword and looked inside. "Hey, any dangerous psychopaths in here? I promise I won't judge," he said, attempting to trick the attackers. The three sins looked inside to find a dark-haired girl working on an oil painting. "Hey little girl, have you been threatened?" I mean, there's a lot of people picking fights with us for no reason whatsoever. Meliodas asked. The girl stiffened, almost appearing as Meliodas scared her. However, the first sin of wrath raised a brow suspiciously as if he recognized the threat first. As the girl's head turned, her face morphed into that of a scary demon. So the traitor to the clan has returned. The demon said. How did you get here? Meliodas asked. Did you get loose during the winter? He asked. The demon glared as it stood up. I've been here far longer than that. In fact, I was grateful as I could sense our clan's return. Though, I was lucky that I was not caught in the blast. Whatever it was. He said. Now Merlin was concerned. You were here for many years and you were not caught in the ceiling? She asked. Whatever that magic was, had failed miserably. I can only assume those with greater power had managed to escape. The demon said. Gowther started thinking, we may have a massive security issue. He thought. Now, I can deal with you myself and restore honor to Lord Zeldris and the Demon King. The demon said as reality started to change. You're free to try. Meliodas said before his demon marks appeared. The demon laughed, oh I will, I am not like any other muscle-bound gluttonous fool. I am Ido the Mirage, my creations may be fake, but they feel very real. Ido said as reality came apart. I think I found the problem. Meliodas said. I believe we stumbled onto a whole set of other problems. Gowther said with the revelation that Ido mentioned. Despite what Gowther said is true, the three sins had to worry about their current predicament first. Starting with the fact that they were in Konoha again. Specifically at the center of the village where it was now an apocalyptic crater where the buildings were damaged, empty and very likely going to fall apart at any moment. We need to find Ido right away. Merlin said in a very serious tone. But Naruto. Naruto looked at Merlin's peaceful sleeping form as he covered her with a blanket. He sighed as he looked up at the night sky where the stars illuminated island. What were stars again? Dad always said they were peepholes or something. Naruto asked. Then he heard a voice, there are people who believe the heaven is in the sky. In a way, they are holes. Said the individual. Naruto turned his head and looked wide-eyed. Who? He tried to ask. The holes are meant to peer down onto the earth. The light that pours out from the stars is from the heavens. The individual continued to say. What? Naruto asked. It's the answer to your question. The belief of these illuminating lights from heaven are called the eyes of heaven. The individual replied. Naruto was still silent as he stared at the person in confusion. The individual blushed as they gave Naruto a sheepish smile. I'm sorry, I was interested in your question and wanted to answer it. They said. My name Elizabeth by the way. She said. Elizabeth, Naruto whispered as a tear fell down his eye. So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.